What if I told you that the way you think about anxiety could completely transform your relationships, your work, even your health? I know that might sound a little surprising, but I have seen it firsthand how shifting my attitude towards anxiety has changed everything for me and my life. Welcome to your Anxiety Toolkit podcast. This is where I bring you all the virtual hugs that I have and all the practical strategies I have to help you face your fears and live each day with courage and compassion. Today, I'm sharing 3 attitude shifts that have helped me move from just managing my anxiety to actually thriving in my life. These shifts didn't just help my mental health, they improved my relationships, my ability to show up fully in my work, and even my physical well-being. So let's dive in. Over the last 10 to 15 years, as I've grown my family, grown my marriage, grown my business and my career, anxiety has come along every step of the way. I am someone who has had multiple different anxiety disorders over the years, including an eating disorder. But the one thing that has been constant and consistent has been that voice of anxiety in my head. And sometimes I even wonder if it's ever going to go away. But these 3 attitude shifts have made it so that I could thrive in my marriage. I could thrive in my career. And as a parent, a lot of these attitude shifts I have had to learn as I've coached my kids through their own fears and anxiety. And so it's not just helping me, it's helping them. So, attitude shift number 1 that I think is probably being the most powerful is that anxiety is actually not a problem. When I first had anxiety, I didn't know any of these skills. I would experience them as if they were actually real threats, real emergencies, imminent danger. And I would be doing all kinds of safety behaviors and compulsions to try and eliminate them. I actually felt like it was the right thing to do, and I'm sure you resonate with that. But once I landed on the idea and the attitude shift that anxiety's not a problem, everything changed. Instead of being tense and hypervigilant and all stressed all the time and trying to avoid being triggered, I sort of shifted to I'm going to let this be here and it's not a problem. Often I'll even say to my clients when they say, well, I've just had the most anxious week, I'll say, so what's the problem with that? Tell me how you're perceiving that. What are you taking? What meaning are you making? Because we could just say that anxiety, it is uncomfortable, I'm not going to lie, but it's no different to having pain or annoying things happening. That's a part of life. And we tend to deal with other annoying things pretty well. When there is an emergency, people with anxiety are the best people to have around because they can handle these stresses so well. So why do we make anxiety the problem? I want us to move into an attitude shift where we're like, so what? Who cares? Anxiety's here. What has it got to say? Oh, bad things are going to happen. The sky is falling. Terrible bad things are going to happen tomorrow or today. All right, let's observe it as anxiety, even our thoughts, our intrusive thoughts, and say, this isn't a problem that needs to be fixed. This is just my brain doing what my brain does. My daughter always says my brain's just braining today, which I think is an amazing attitude shift because it just normalizes the fact that our brains are primed to come up with some drama and we don't have to make it a problem. So that's the first attitude shift I want you to make. The way it has helped me is when real stresses do show up, I can address the real stressor, but without engaging in the drama that my brain adds to it, the catastrophizing, the dramatic, over-the-top black and white thinking. I can just acknowledge anxiety and I can go, of course anxiety is going to be here. That's not a problem. What needs to be done? Let's take a look and let's get to work. It has helped me in my marriage because a lot of the time I used to sort of project this anxiety onto him. I'd come to him and be like, but these bad things might happen, and what will we do, and how will we handle it? And he'd always be like, I don't even think there's a problem. And it allowed me to go, oh, okay. Okay, my brain is braining, but let's actually not make all of the noise a problem anymore. And that has been so, so helpful for me. The second attitude shift was that having anxiety does not, and let me repeat, does not mean that I am broken or bad or wrong or weak. When we experience anxiety, so let's say our brain has interpreted that there is a threat. There's not a threat, but our brain has set off the fire alarm that there is a threat. What we often then do is we either respond as if there is danger, like we just talked about, with hypervigilance and we're overcorrecting to try and prevent bad things from happening or prevent ourselves from being triggered or prevent ourselves from having thoughts or emotions. And that's one way we handle it. But then sometimes when we acknowledge that our brains made a mistake, then we go into beating ourselves up. What's wrong with me? Why does my brain do this? My brain's broken. Something must be wrong. Why is it doing this again? This is so messed up. I'm terrible. I'm the worst. We move into a shame spiral, and we just treat the presence of anxiety as if it's something wrong with us, that we are innately broken and unworthy. And that couldn't be further from the truth. That attitude keeps us stuck. Well, maybe you're not engaging in the anxiety, but now you're just engaging in another story, which is that this makes you inherently bad. Here's the thing, and I think about this all the time. Every time I get hungry, which is uncomfortable, right? I hate being hungry. It's actually a very uncomfortable feeling for me. I don't know if that's because I restricted for so many years and I kind of have an association to it as being hungry is like when I used to suffer the most. And I used to push myself through being hungry so much around the whole day that it kind of used to make me feel like I was being punished because I was punishing myself. When I'm hungry, I don't get mad at myself for being hungry, like, oh, you're hungry again. Why does this keep happening? What's wrong with you? We've got to fix this. I don't do that. No, when I'm hungry, I go, oh, my brain is telling me I'm hungry. My body's doing what it does naturally. And I'm going to do the next appropriate rational thing, which is to eat. Now, when my body is anxious and my brain sets off anxiety, even though it might be a mistake, my job is to just again say, this is just what my brain does. And the truth is, I'm genetically set up to have anxiety. Of course, my brain is going to be anxious. And I'm going to practice responding rationally and in a way that's compassionate and just work with it. Again, not make it a problem. We don't want to have the attitude that there's something wrong with us. And your most important shift here is to just say, yeah, it's just a thing I experience, like an itch or like pain or like hunger or like we get a headache when we've been around too much noise or we've been, we get overheated when we've ran too fast. That's just our body doing what our body does to regulate. And sometimes it's going to send out some anxiety, but that's not an innate problem in me. So I can first work at not making it a problem, and then I can also not make the presence of anxiety mean anything about me as a person. That's attitude number 2. That's attitude shift number 2. Okay, so let's move to attitude shift number 3. And you guys have heard me talk about this so much, but let me share with you how this has changed everything for me in all areas of my life. The attitude shift I want you to make is the bring it on approach. So again, first, we don't make anxiety a problem. That's attitude shift number 1. Attitude shift number 2 is that we also don't make it mean anything about us, that we're not the problem. Attitude shift number 3 is where we go, bring it. Let's have it. What am I afraid of? And this is where I want you to get really clear. What are the things you're afraid of? And how can you say, bring it on? And this is where it can help you in not just your day-to-day, but in your relationships, in your career, in your family, in your health. This is where it can be so important. Identify, oh, I'm anxious about driving. Bring it on. Let's go. My kids and my family would love for us all to go to the beach on the weekend. Bring it. Let me face my fear while also honoring what I value as a family member in my family, as a mother, as a wife. Oh, I have the fear of being judged and, let's say abandoned in your relationship. Bring it on. I'm going to show up as authentically as I can, as compassionately as I can, so that I can then connect with my partner. Because when I'm closed off and jaded and hiding and faking, there might be a connection, but it's not that deep, vulnerable connection that we all crave and want. If I have anxiety at work about what if I don't do a great job, what if I make a mistake, I'm going to only work at about 50%. I'm not fully showing up. I'm not being vulnerable. I'm not showing my boss what I could do if I was willing to fail. So much of my career, this podcast, has been about being willing to fail, being willing to make a fool of myself, being willing to be wrong, to be willing to be judged. And when I said, bring it on, let's go, it allowed me to grow this incredible award-winning podcast, right? So when we actually have that bring it on approach, it can touch every area of your life in the most beautiful way. For those people who have generalized anxiety, they may be worrying about health or money or their career or their relationships. The bring it on approach allows us to show up in complete alignment with our values. Or you're worried about money. Absolutely. Things can be financially strapped. That is so overwhelmingly scary, especially in these economic times. If we're sitting there just ruminating, not wanting to have anxiety, we don't move to finding actual solutions. So let's say, bring it on. The anxiety is not a problem. It's not going to kill me. It's not going to damage me. It's not going to harm me. It doesn't mean I'm bad or wrong. Bring it. What do I need to do? How can I move forward unconditionally with an attitude shift where I'm saying, it's okay that you're here, anxiety. You cannot drive the car, but you can ride shotgun. Let's go. What can I do to solve this problem? It's so important too, these attitude shifts when it comes to making decisions. So many of my clients and my students and listeners report about the difficulty of making a decision in the fear that they experience that something will go wrong, that they will fail, that they'll make a mistake, they'll make the wrong decision. And I want to say, when you're making a decision, all you have is choices. Never the perfect choice, because you would have already made the decision if it was a perfect choice. The options are all imperfect. It's a matter of whether you're going to move forward in the face of imperfection and be willing to bring the anxiety with you. Let's go, bring it on. And with that compassion that even when things don't go perfectly, you will radically show up for yourself and support yourself and troubleshoot the problems as you go. When you have that attitude shift, failing is not a problem. It's just something we then address at the time and we make the best decision we can and we move forward. Our value and worth is never on the line. Again, I'll say that. Our value and worth is never on the line. Who we are, making a bad decision doesn't push us over the cliff into being a bad person. There is no cliff of being a bad person. People often say like, oh, that might push me off the cliff and I'll be never able to redeem myself. No, that's all stories. What we want to do is sit down, identify, what would I do if anxiety wasn't here? What would I do if I knew I wouldn't fail? and go try those things. Try them on, see if they will work. And again, attitude shift number 1, don't make them a problem. Attitude shift number 2, anxiety doesn't mean anything about you as a person. And 3, bring it. Let's go. I have talked about my personal experience with having generalized anxiety and OCD is it's about how can I make this my bravest day? How can I be the bravest me? That's the work here. That's the attitude shift we're looking for. That means that anxiety isn't calling the shots. You are. And if you fall, it's a soft landing, right? That we're not going to beat ourselves up. And anyone who does criticize and judge us, okay, they're not our people. Like, we don't need to take that into consideration all the time. Don't worry about that so much. Let them judge us. Okay, so much beauty has come in my life for just letting people be in their lane and I focus on my lane. That's our work. So these 3 attitude shifts, if practiced even in their order, you don't have to do them in the order, but I just feel like it's the natural flow. If you can do this, you will start to see all the areas of your life expand. How has this helped my health? I have found, as somebody who has postural orthostatic tachycardic syndrome, POTS for short, is the more I'm stressed and the more I'm anxious, the more that condition shows up. It's crazy to me how my stress management is a huge part of my management of that condition. When I'm able to do these attitude shifts, I tend to manage stress so much better. When I'm able to manage my stress and anxiety, I tend to be less exhausted. I sleep better. I tend to eat better too, because I'm not sort of just anxious eating, or I'm not sometimes I don't get hungry and I forget to eat. These small shifts can set a building blocks so that I am feeling healthier. It's actually recently, I'm kind of going into this middle-age season of my life where my body's starting to change. And I knew I had to get back in the gym and start weight training. But oh my gosh, going to the gym, what are the kids going to do? Where will they be? Who will they be with? How will they get ready for school if I'm going to do this? It's so many excuses I made in my mind. Instead, I just sat down and wrote, okay, what are my fears? What am I afraid of here? That I'll be tired, that I will feel terrible, that it'll hurt, that it is too much. And then what did I do? I said, okay, I'm going to let all that be there. That's not a problem. The fact that it's hard doesn't mean there's a problem. Doing hard things is important. We know that. It's a beautiful day to do hard things. Number 2, the fact that I'm having struggles with this doesn't mean I'm bad. And number 3 is bring it. Let's do it imperfectly. Let's just whack it together. You guys know about my theory of whack it together. Whack it together has allowed me to achieve things I never thought possible. And that's because I let go of perfectionism and I just whacked it together. I imagine like an IKEA shelf, right? Now you could spend hours trying to get it all lined up, but life isn't really like that, right? IKEA cabinets aren't like that. They don't line up perfectly. They're perfect metaphor for life. And so sometimes you do just have to whack it together and let it be imperfect. And that's what I want for you. I want us to be the kindest, messiest humans we can be, but we are going after what we want. We are going after what matters to us, and we're not letting fear get in the way. So there you have it. There are the 3 attitude shifts that I want you to make in your day-to-day experience of anxiety so that you can squeeze the goodness out of your relationships, out of your family life, your career, your school, your health, your general day-to-day. These shifts aren't just for anxiety, they're for life. And I hope that they bring you all the happiness and joy in your life. because that's what your anxiety toolkit is all about. As always, it is a beautiful day to do hard things. Do not forget that. If you love this episode and you want to share it, I would love if you would. That's how our podcast grows. And also, if you would, please leave us a review. The reviews help us to grow this show so that we can show and share this with as many people as possible. Have a wonderful day, everybody. I'll see you next week.